All right, on that note, Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 1. As I introduce this sermon today, I was thinking about something that happened to me when I was pretty young, in my 20s. And I suppose I was maybe 3 or 4 years into marriage. It wasn't very far. And I had this conversation with my dad that, even when I think about it today, makes me wince a little bit. At this point, I'd been married 3 or 4 years. He'd been married 30-some years. And I thought that it'd be a great idea if I sat him down and gave him a lecture about being a better husband to my mom. I don't know. It seemed like I could do this. So, I sat him down and I gave him this full-blown lecture, tips, insights, corrections. I thought I was being helpful. As you can imagine, he didn't take it real well. He just got really quiet, like really quiet. Not the quiet that says, like, I'm thinking about what you're saying, but the quiet that says, I'm restraining myself lest I end you right now. That kind of quiet. And I knew it didn't go well. And now that I've been married 30 years, now I know why. I know why it didn't go well. Because at that time, I just didn't know my place. It just wasn't my place. I should have come to listen, not to lecture. I should have come to learn, not to give advice. And I just didn't know my place in the whole thing. And the truth is, I think you and I do that same thing with God. Maybe you don't even realize you're doing it, but often we come into God's presence thinking we have something to say, thinking we have the right question. We're going to instruct God or tell him what to do or maybe negotiate with him. But Ecclesiastes stops us and reminds us of something critical. We need to know our place. And in fact, there's one verse here in Ecclesiastes that I think summarizes this whole section. It's verse 2 of chapter 5. It says, God's in heaven and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. You see, if there's one thing I want you to take today from this, it's that you got to know your place by submitting to God and being satisfied in him. You got to know your place. And the way you do that is you submit to God and you find satisfaction in him and him alone. All right, so we're in Ecclesiastes, and like I've been telling you every week, Ecclesiastes is one of the most unsettling books in the Bible because it reminds us of the single truth that most of us are trying to avoid. Life is short, and then you die. And Ecclesiastes is hard, but it's not all there is. Ecclesiastes insists that facing death head on is really the first step to living well. And so I always remind you of these couple things about Ecclesiastes. First, the word vanity is used 38 times. If vanity means breath, it's breathing on a cold January morning and watching your breath and then trying to grab that. And what happens to it? It disappears. Life is short. It's like a vapor, a mist. That's life. It's short and it's hard to figure out. And the Ecclesiastes, it was written for a student. This preacher is writing it for his mentee. He's mentoring someone. And this idea of this book is he's coming around and grasping this idea that life is short and then you die. So it's not tidy theology. In fact, Ecclesiastes is a bit sarcastic. And so it's rough. So today, we're coming out of a pretty dark section. I think last week's text was the darkest text in the book of Ecclesiastes. I mean, it was rough. I mean, it said everything is like a chasing after the wind, so it's probably better to just be dead than alive. That's where we came from. But what I was trying to do last time was set this idea that, it might be better to be dead, but in Christ, you've already died. You died with him. So therefore, you have new life. And that changes our entire perspective. So we come out of that dark place, and now the preacher is going to give us some hope, some kind of advice for if you properly understand that God is over or above the sun, if you properly understand your place, you can figure out how to live life under the sun. And so in essence, we need to know our place with God so that we can rightly live life. So that's the idea. Know your place by submitting to God and being satisfied in Him. And really, this is the good life, isn't it? This is how to live. We acknowledge our limitations. We live life under the sun, and that explores, and we explore our connection to God who lives above the sun. And in this way, we know our place. And this life of knowing our place is good, rich, and fulfilling. So I want to look at what it means to know our place today. And I think really this pretty long section breaks nicely into two parts. So we're going to have some subpoints in here, but I think we really come across with two ideas. Know your place by submitting to God and being satisfied in Him. So let's look at this first idea. Know your place by being submissive. If there's a key verse in this section, it's verse 7. But God is the one you should fear. What does it mean to fear God? What does that look like? Well, fear does mean respect. It means respect. It means honor, honoring God. That's all true. But fear also means just terror. Terror of a powerful being and the effect that he could have on you. And fear means submission to this God. You're like, I don't want to think about God being terrified of God. Well, think of it this way. I fear God, therefore, I take a knee before Him, knowing that His awesome power could wipe me out at any moment, but trusting that because of His steadfast love, He won't. I think that summarizes the fear of God. Some of us have it all wrong. You see, we think God is our personal assistant. He's ChatGPT. He's supposed to give us the answers we need when we want it. He's supposed to do the things that we ask of Him when we want it. And He's supposed to make our lives better. You guys, I think if you've ever heard someone say, I'm mad at God, if you've ever said, I'm mad at God for whatever reason, I think you've miscalculated your relationship with God. That person's made Him into their servant, and they're mad that their servant didn't do for them what they wanted. I have news for you today. You were created to serve and glorify God, not the other way around. That's knowing your place. Understanding this means we are submissive to God. And submissive looks different than what we normally see around us. In fact, submission in our world is kind of a dirty word, you know. You don't submit to anyone. I mean, two kids wrestling on the playground. One makes the other say, uncle. Why? He wants them to submit. Kid won't say uncle. Why? He doesn't want to submit. Submission's a dirty word. And yet, the preacher here has some advice on actively submitting to God. And heeding this will help us know our place in this world. So I've got a few points of how to be submissive that the preacher is going to tell us. And we're going to just look at this text together and work through it. So the first thing is listen, don't lecture. If you want to be submissive to God, listen, don't lecture. Look at verses 1 to 3. I want to read that together today. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. So the preacher has in mind here a temple setting, right? It's the Old Testament, the temple setting. You're going into the temple, and he says, guard your steps. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they don't know what they're doing evil. Be not rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God's in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. For dreams come with much business, and a fool's voice with many words. So, I mean, what he's saying here is when you go to the temple, don't be a fool who just has dreams, who has all these dreams and is ready to tell God all this stuff and lecture God and spout off to God. Choose your words carefully. Have you noticed that people don't appreciate lectures? Have you noticed that? I don't know. When you lecture someone, they generally don't respond well. I'll never forget. About 10 years ago, it's well documented. I've talked about it a lot. I started drinking coffee. It was a great experience. It was, interesting. I chronicled the whole thing, and I've talked about it a lot. And so one of the things that I did when I started learning to drink coffee is I wanted to do it the right way. So, I wanted to drink good coffee. So I got in these circles of coffee drinkers, and they're try this kind of bean and grind it yourself, and here's how to brew the coffee and make it just right. And okay. So I started talking to all the coffee snobs, okay, and about good coffee. And so one day my father-in-law comes to visit, and in the morning he breaks out his canister of Folgers, all right? And I had been in circles where Folgers was frowned upon, And so he breaks out his Folgers, and he just kind of randomly dumps it into the drip coffee maker, and he's pretty excited about this. And so I started to lecture him on good coffee and how Folgers should be looked down upon, and how he really should be grinding his own coffee and telling all this. And he just looks at me and he goes, "Really, Dave? You've been drinking coffee for 5 minutes and you know all this?" Point taken. I should just let the man, he's been drinking Folgers for 50 years probably, let the man enjoy his coffee. I think that there was a moment where I go, maybe I should listen, not lecture. I mean, it's the same with God. You go into God's presence, and many of us just give him a lecture. He doesn't need it. Because, by the way, God literally knows everything already. He doesn't need your advice. Listen, don't lecture. But then, as we're submissive, really the writer of Ecclesiastes takes us to another point. Listen, when you do speak, he's going to say, choose your words carefully. Look at verses 4 to 7. Now, when you vow a vow to God, do not delay paying it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you vow. It's better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Let not your mouth lead you into sin, and do not say before the messenger that it was a mistake, I know I made the vow, but oops, I can't do that, right? Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For when dreams increase and words grow many, there is vanity. But God is the one you must fear. Really, this idea here is be careful when you're talking to God what you promise him. Choose your words very carefully. Choose your vow carefully. Choose what you say carefully. All right, I want to talk to all the married men here for a second. I want you to imagine this scenario. You're sitting at the counter. You're having a conversation with your wife. As you're talking, you're looking and gazing into your wife, and she says something and has this particular mannerism, and as she says it, this thought goes through your head. Wow, she is just like her mother. What should you do with that thought? Absolutely nothing. Choose your words very carefully. I had a personal example from this in my marriage, and I'm not sharing that because I'm choosing my words carefully today. The truth is, most of us spend more time thinking about what we say to our family members than what we say to God. We just flippantly make promises. We talk to God in a way that's completely disrespectful. And we're like, hey, God is my friend. I don't have to be formal or eloquent. I can just spout off anything. And there is a sense in which it's true. He is your friend. And you should talk to him. But a lot of us give more respect to our friends than we do to God. And just remember, he is your friend. He is also the God of the universe. Just remember that as you talk to him. If you're rude, demanding, if you make promises that you don't intend to keep. Like some of you have come before God and you're like, God, I'm going to make a deal with you, okay? If you come through for me in this thing, I'll never sin again, okay? Yeah, you just sinned, right? Like just in saying that because you lied. You know it's not going to happen. We try to bargain with him. We just, it's not that we shouldn't pray. I'm not telling you don't pray. I'm just saying don't be disrespectful. Don't make promises you can't keep. There's a third thing here as we're learning to be submissive. And really, he's just saying, if you're going to know your place and be submissive, not only listen and choose your words carefully, but also know that everybody must submit, even the powerful. Like submitting to God is just the natural way the world works. Look at verses 8 and 9. If you see in a province the oppression of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, don't be amazed at the matter. For the high official is watched by a higher, and there are higher ones, and there are yet higher ones over them. But this is gain for a land in every way. The king committed to cultivate fields. I really scratched my head on this section for a bit. Like, what does this have to do with knowing your place and being submissive to God? I just really labored over it. And I finally came to this conclusion. I really think the idea here is that if a government official behaves badly and he's oppressing someone, taking advantage of him, he does have someone higher than him to whom he must answer. And that official, she has someone higher than her that she has to answer to. And it goes up and up and up. And everybody answers to someone. And ultimately, who's ever at the top answers to God. And that's just the way the world works. And it's actually beneficial for the world we live in. So know your place. Everyone answers to someone, ultimately to God. So therefore, you should know your place and answer to God. And for once, this whole idea of knowing your place and being submissive to God, for once in Ecclesiastes, we don't have to try so hard to put this in the whole story of the Bible. Like last week, we're just crossing things out and going, once you put it in the whole story, it completely changes this. The writer of Ecclesiastes is saying, okay, I'm acknowledging that there's a God above the sun and that you should be submissive to him. And this has really been a story throughout the entire Bible, this idea of submission. Think about it. If you think back in creation, what were Adam and how were they created? They were created in perfect submission to God. And how did that go? It went really well. Everything in the garden worked the way it was supposed to. But Adam and Eve said, we kind of like to go it our own way. We're going to do the thing you told us not to do because we don't want to submit to you anymore, God. We'll go our own way. And in that moment, everything in this world changed. And all the brokenness that you see around you comes from that moment. And we have continued this lack of submission to God. It is not the way you were created. And yet we all do it. But guess what? There was one who was perfectly submissive to the Father. I mean, Adam and Eve in the garden, they said, F you, God, we're on our own. They did. It's stark. It's bad. What did Jesus say? Father, not my will, but your will. It's not a coincidence that Jesus sat in another garden. It's not a coincidence that he bowed to the Father. And when we had declared rebellion, when we had said, I don't want to submit to you, God, when we declared that, Jesus declared perfect submission. And what did he do? We get credit for that. When you rebelled against God, you get the credit of Jesus. This is the gospel. This is the hope. This is the hope. And then Jesus restores us. And he takes all the brokenness and mess in us. You see, we were created to submit. And life works best when we joyfully submit to God. And knowing that is joyful. It's possible, though, to submit to God and to resent him. It's possible to do that. It's possible to say, God, I submit to you, but I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it at all, God. In fact, I resent because you didn't do what I wanted you to do. So I submit, but I don't like it. And that takes us really to our next point, is that there's a better way to do this, to be satisfied. The preacher now moves from the temple to the marketplace. And really, as we know our place before God, first of all, we submit to him. Now, we find complete and utter satisfaction in him. The preacher moves from the temple to the marketplace, from our words to our wallet, and his message is simple. You won't find satisfaction under the sun until you trust the God who reigns above it. You won't. God created you to be satisfied in him. That happens when we know our place. He's God, we're not. And when we know that, and when we find satisfaction in him, the good gifts he gives us in life flow out of that satisfaction, and money is part of that. But the temptation that every one of us faces is that we seek satisfaction in the gifts rather than the giver. This is a dangerous shift, everyone. We seek satisfaction in the gifts, not the giver of the gifts. So the preacher now is going to warn us of the dangers of this. And we're going to walk through this section together. Look at verse 10 and 11. And I just want to kind of point out how he's talking about if you're seeking satisfaction in money, you are never going to find it because you were wired to seek satisfaction in God. So look at all the way he talks about this. Verse 10. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also vanity. So, he's essentially saying there, if you search out money, if you seek wealth and income, you will never be satisfied with that. Okay, that makes sense. He keeps going, verse 11. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? So the idea here is that when wealth increases, so do those who eat them, so do the number of mouths in your life who want to be fed. I don't know if anyone's here has ever won the lottery. You don't need to raise your hand. Or known someone who won the lottery. I haven't, but I've read stories about them. What happens when someone wins the lottery? When they win the lottery, what they learn is that they have a lot of friends. Like friends come out of the woodwork. Everybody wants to be their friend. They're like, hey, Fred, we were great friends in second grade. Don't you remember that, right? The more you have, the more mouths there are to feed. The more things to get. If you just keep pursuing and finding satisfaction in money, you'll never have it. And then money can be lost. Look at verse 13. There's a grievous evil that I've seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt. And those riches were lost in a bad venture. And he's father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go back, naked as he came. And he shall take nothing for his toil, that he may carry away in his hand. I think if you find satisfaction in money, you've placed your satisfaction in something that's fleeting because money can be lost. How many retirees? I've known a lot of you guys. How many retirees spend sleepless night worrying that your nest egg that you've built over the course of your life, that the company you worked for may not be able to pay out your pension? The market will take a downturn and everything you saved will be lost. And there's no comfort in retirement because you're worried that it will be lost. There's so much going on here because money leads to anxiety. The more you have, the more you worry about it. It's just all it takes is one bad event. And money actually causes stress, anxiety. And this is why God says, I want you to be satisfied in me, not the things I give you. And it can't go with you. Look at verse 16. There's also a grievous evil. He, just as he came, shall he go, and what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? So like, hey, you came in this world, you're going, and you can't take it with you. And then verse 17, moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation, in sickness, and in anger. He eats in dark. He eats with a cloud over his head. Like, because if you have a lot of money and you're constantly worried about losing it, the money actually makes you miserable. God says, don't be satisfied in things. Be satisfied in me. Because God gives us good gifts. We're supposed to seek satisfaction in him, not his gift. So that's the dangers of seeking satisfaction in the gift. But then, now he's going to flip and he's going to give us a key to really finding satisfaction in God. And that's, if we do that, he says, you can enjoy God's good gifts. Look at verse 18. Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him, for this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power, to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy in his heart. What he's saying here is, basically, if you find your satisfaction in God, you can actually enjoy the good gifts that he gives, rather than trying to find your satisfaction in the gifts and always be worried about losing them. So if you find your satisfaction in God, you can rejoice in his good gifts. And let's be honest, I think some Christians out there feel guilty for enjoying life. I think sometimes we get this like tinge in us that says, oh, I should be somber and not enjoy this stuff. But joy and reverence can go together. This Ecclesiastes flips the idea upside down. It says, if you find satisfaction in God, you're free to enjoy what he gives you. Your food, your work, your families, your rest. It's not indulgence, it's worship. And look at verse 19. I'll just read it again. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power, to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil. This is a gift from God. So listen, we live in Iowa. If you get a good steak, you enjoy it. Enjoy the steak. If he gives you this like awesome family night where you have all the family playing a game, laughing, you're out with friends having a great time, and there's just joy and laughter, like rejoice in it. Say, God, thanks for giving me a good gift. Like, enjoy it. The danger isn't the enjoyment. The danger is forgetting the giver. And that takes us into chapter 6. And here we're going to just see, I don't have time to do every verse in chapter 6. This is a really long section, but I want to highlight a couple of verses in 6. Because it really helps us to understand that we shouldn't see satisfaction in the gift. That's a problem. Look at just the first 3 verses of chapter 6. There's an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires, yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. This is a grievous evil. If a man fathers 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things, he also has no burial. I say, a stillborn child is better off than he. Here's the basic idea of this. If you seek power and wealth and honor, and you seek satisfaction in them, they'll be gone. You won't enjoy them. If you seek God, these things can be seen as a blessing to be enjoyed. And that's why in verse 3, it says this word, not satisfied. His soul is not satisfied. Why is it not satisfied? It's not satisfied because it's seeking satisfaction in the gifts instead of the giver. So, in the Old Testament, things that were honor, children were seen as honor. So if man had 100 kids, he said, like the more kids you had in the Old Testament, the more honor you had. If you seek having kids just to have honor, like you're seeking them for the wrong reason. Another thing, wealth was seen as honor. If you seek money just for the sake of seeking honor, you're seeking the wrong thing. You seek the God who gives them. And so he says, skip down to verse 9. He says, better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This is also vanity and a striving after wind. So if you're seeking the wrong things for the wrong reason, they'll never be enough. You'll have a wandering appetite. Have you ever done this? Have you ever gone out to eat and struggled with what to pick on the menu? And you're looking at the menu and you're like, oh man, I don't want to get the wrong thing. Which one do I choose? And then you finally pick, they bring it out, you're looking at your meal, and then you look over at the table next to you. And someone has ordered something there at that table, and you go, oh, I wish I had ordered that thing. I want that one instead. That's a wandering appetite. And we do this all the time. But if we're satisfied with God, then we can be satisfied with the good gifts He gives. Ecclesiastes 6 paints a picture of a restless life, a person whose appetite keeps wandering, and they're always looking over the fence, scrolling through what they don't have, dreaming about what they could, the next big thing. And that's why he says, don't do that. If you're always craving something else, you'll never enjoy what you have. But if you're satisfied in God, you'll say, thank you for the good gifts you have given. And again, this works out in the whole story of the Bible really well. Like it fits in there. Be satisfied in God and in God alone. So, in the garden, what happened? Well, Adam and Eve weren't satisfied. I mean, they were created. He was everything they needed. But they wanted to do their own thing. They wanted to go do the one thing He told them they shouldn't do. They wanted to eat the fruit. They weren't satisfied in Him. And so they pursued the fruit. They pursued their own way. And so they fell. And I mean, again, Jesus, He's the answer to all of this. I see the flickering behind me. Be not distracted by Brian shutting off the projector. It's like, it's in my eyes. They were created to be satisfied in God. They pursued their own thing. Jesus comes, gives His life for them. And then what does Jesus say? He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. John 15. I am all. Be satisfied in me. And now Jesus, this is what He's doing. He's restoring us in this way. All right, let's bring this to a close. I guess, it's not hard. It's know your place. Not in a belittling way, not in a shame on you kind of way, but in the kind of way that actually sets you free. Stop pretending you're in charge. Stop chasing the wind. Be free to stop thinking God owes you something. God's in heaven, and you're on earth. It's not a threat, it's a gift. Because God, who is above the sun, has come down to us in Jesus. And He became one of us. And He invites us to the good life, not by forcing us and taking control, but by submitting to the Father and showing us what submission looks like. He didn't hoard gifts. He was satisfied in the Father, and we too can be satisfied. And that's what we were made for. Okay, I started this sermon by talking about this guy who didn't know his place. Me, I didn't know my place. I want to end with sharing a story about a guy who did know his place. Admiral McCraven. If you know that, you may not remember that name, but I think you've probably seen his speech that went viral, his "Make Your Bed" speech. And there's another story about this admiral. I mean, pretty high up, and he was attending the homecoming of a fallen soldier. And as the casket came off the plane, and the mother of this fallen soldier wept at the casket, the story is told that Admiral McCraven stood next to her, and a man with all his power and all his honor, and what he did was he just took a knee. He didn't say anything. He just took a knee. Because in that moment, he knew his place. He knew his place. He got it. I think you and I need to know our place, and it's an invitation for us to know our place before God, not in shame, not in fear, but in reverence, in submission. And in God we find satisfaction, because when we know our place before the God who is in heaven, we're finally free to live well under the sun. And in that way, He's enough for us. Today, for you, it might be aspirational. Like, I am not satisfied in God. I have not been submitting to Him. I don't know my place. Tonight, this morning as we close, I want to encourage you to use this song as a prayer. To say, God, can Jesus be enough for me? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, today, I don't know, God, sometimes I feel like we get it wrong so often. I'm thankful for Jesus, who got it right for us. And we want to submit and be satisfied. Jesus, we want you to be our all. And we want you to be enough for us, not other things. Help us. Help us to know our place and to be satisfied